In this video, I want to go through and create kind of our saving or our post request. And the way I want that to happen is when we press a key, I want it to trigger something that will simply, what do you call it? Call a function that we have in C++ here that saves or posts our data to our database. So we're going to have to go through and do a couple little things. But first of all, let's go ahead and set this up. So I wanted to do a u function, make it blueprint callable. And I'm going to do it void save data. And here, there's not really much else to do, but because we're on the client, actually, let's do it so we do it periodically. We're going to do this differently. So let's go in our player controller, create a new protected section, or not section, function, and do void, let's call it save data. And what we're going to do is on begin play, which I think spawns by default. Yes, it does. If we are running on the server, we're going to do a timer. So we're going to do get world timer manager dot timer, and we need a timer handle. So f timer handle, t save handle, and t save handle. Then we have this and the function. So a persistence player controller, save data. Then we want to pass in the rate at which it's going to loop. So I want to do once every 5 seconds, and then pass in true, indicating that we want it to loop. So normally this would be something that you would place inside of like the game mode, for example. And every, let's say, 2 minutes, what you would do is you would get the player array that's from the game state, you would loop through it, and pretty much save each player that is connected to the database. So instead, because this way we're going to have multiple timers kind of running for each client, which isn't really, that's not a good thing, obviously. Instead, we could have one timer that will periodically save every player in the game. Now we have it, so we periodically call save game, or save data. I'm just going to do a log just to make sure everything's working, because I want to have that be printed out anyways. I'm going to go ahead and build. And I want to see if it'll work without me recompiling, or relaunching the editor. Play as client. And I did 10 seconds, I think. No, 5 seconds. Yeah, so saving just got printed, and we should see it getting printed here again, which we do. So we are saving. So we have our save function that periodically runs. And obviously you wouldn't want this to run every 5 seconds either. But again, for testing and the videos, we don't have to wait forever. So once save data occurs, we want to do a couple things. We want to fill out our player structure. So we're going to do f player data, player data. So player data dot player ID. That's obviously just going to be our kind of our default, which is, if you recall, it's 1, 2, 3, 5. So PID equals 1, 2, 3, 5. And what are you complaining about? I thought PID was, oh, nope, it's an integer. For some reason I was thinking it was a string. So then we have our health, so we have to get our pawn, and then we also have our location, so another reason to get our pawn. So let's go ahead and grab our pawn real quick. So a persistence player character, or a persistence tutorial character equals, we want to get, it's get pawn, and it's a template, so a persistence tutorial character, like so. And if character is valid, we will run through and save everything. So we have our character. Now we can go ahead and get the location. So f vector location equals character, get character location. And from there, because we have our location, we can do a couple things. But first off, let's actually set our health because that's in the order. So player data dot health equals character get health. Then player data dot xcord equals location dot x. And we're going to repeat this for y and z. So our y chord equals location dot y, and our z chord equals location dot z. So this fills out everything we need. So we have our, one thing we have now is our is valid. So player data dot is valid equals true. So that's just what we're going to go ahead and set. So we're setting everything we need, and now we need to serialize it. So pretty much we're going to create a JSON object out of it. So we're going to be doing the exact same thing as what's inside of here, except we can go ahead and actually we can go ahead and copy this. Gonna paste it down in. So here we have plus PID. So let's see, F string. What was it? 1, 2, 3, 5. Not constructed that way. Okay, so F string from int 1, 2, 3, 5. So that'll set up the URL all the same. We're not going to be doing a GET request. So actually, scratch that. We don't need that because we're doing a POST request. If we look at our API here, our post mapping is just player data. We're not passing in a PID, so we can remove that portion. That's my mistake. So we have just the URL, nothing else added to it. Change GET to POST. And actually, that's already in the commented out portion. That actually pretty much does everything we need. So we're going to uncomment out this setup. And we're going to serialize player data. So now we just need a string. So F string, JSON string. And that'll take care of that. So what it's doing is we have our player data structure. It's already filled out. We create our request. We go ahead and create a string that we're going to use to pass in because in JSON, this is all getting sent as a string. Then we use the FJSON object converter, which is a very handy little class there, to go ahead and serialize our player data structure for us. It takes care of everything that we need, that we would need to do, so we don't have to do it manually, which is pretty awesome. Then we just add our JSON string pretty much as the body. So as you see here, we're in the body. This is essentially what we're doing, just in these 3 lines here. So after that, we just process the request. Might as well change that comment out to post request, and we are hopefully good to go. So this is going to create a slight issue because actually you will see here shortly. So let's go ahead and compile and give it a try. Okay, declaration character hides class member. Line 112. 112. What are you hiding? Is there something else called character? Okay, so I guess there is a get character then. So never mind. So we have to change this one to, let's do a controlled character. And just change everywhere where we did character to controlled character. And because of that, we can also, even though get pawn and get character are going to do the exact same thing, apparently there's a get character function that, screw it. I guess get character does something, and I don't even know. I'm not going to care enough to look into it. But we just changed the name up, and we should be good to go. So let's hit play. Wait for it to say saving. Saving successful. And it reset our location. So is it duplicating our characters? Yeah, it is, because we're creating a new pawn each time as well. So if I refresh, we can see a bunch of these entries, but they are kind of working as intended. So that kind of leaves us with a little bit of an issue. So that issue, let me look and see where, here it is. So where we bind it. So when our request is completed, we call on process request complete, which goes through and pretty much screws us because this is what we use when we spawn. We do not want that. We we don't care for it. It has no purpose in our case, so we can remove that. And I'm going to go ahead and actually delete these rows. And if you were smart enough to pay attention, you will notice what the problem was that I was referring to. So we hit play. Wait for it to say saving down here. So, says saving. Let's refresh. And here we have a new entry. So I'm going to jump, I don't know, somewhere way down here. It just saved again. So we should have 2 more savings. And which we do. So we have the same health, same player ID, and all that kind of stuff. But we have these 2 are the same because we didn't move. And then I jumped off. We have this guy. So I'm going to actually decrement my health. So I'm going to press F and bring it down to 15. Wait for it to say saving, which it does. Close it and refresh. We now have an entry with our health being at 15. So we know everything is saving properly, but the problem is it's creating multiple entries in this table. And as you can kind of imagine, that is a bit of a problem. So that's something we're going to have to work out. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those rows, apply everything, and we're going to have to alter this because currently we're doing a post. That's just fine. And if we really wanted to, what we could do is delete the entry. You know, if we find an entry that matches player data, we could delete it and then repost a new entry, or we could create a procedure that goes through and updates, you know, whichever one it finds. So for example, we would have some pseudocode here. Well, let's do, actually, let me go ahead and create the procedure. Then we have get by PID. Do we ever end up using that? Or is that just for example? No, we do use it. So I'm going to create another procedure. Let's give this one a name of update player, or update player data. It's going to take in, you know, all the parameters. So we would have an in parameter of ID, for example, an in parameter of, how was it, PID? No, it was is valid. So is valid, and they're going to be of the type, you know, full ID is the type int, and so on. Let me actually look and see what they are. Let's alter the table. I can move that over. So we have int, tiny int. So is valid is going to be a tiny int. Then we have PID, which is an int. So another one. So PID, that's going to be the type int. Then we have health, X, Y, and Z that are all floats. So in health, which is float. Then we can copy this 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. Here we have X chord, Y chord, and Z chord. Well, now we just got to rename them to capitals, which I forgot. So PID is valid. Health has capital H. These are capital XC, YC, and ZC. So that should match these correctly. And then the pseudocode, which would pretty much be update. We're going to update the player data table. We're going to want to set each value. So we would do, what is it? We'd index with these with an underscore, actually. Let's index all these input parameters with an underscore. The reason for that is you'll see here in a second. So we want to set ID to equal underscore ID. Then we want to set is valid to equal underscore is valid, and so on and so on. So PID equals PID, health equals health, so they're all going to go through and update these values. But the condition is going to be, we want to do that where, what is it? ID is equal to, no, PID is equal to underscore PID. So in our player data table, we want to set all of our variables to the passed in variables where PID is equal to underscore PID, the passed in player ID. So pretty much if we pass in 1, 2, 3, 5, let's say we have a dozen tables in here that are all different PIDs, we would only update this table here that has the PID of 1, 2, 3, 5. So let's go ahead and apply it, and yep, syntax was right. Freaking nailed it. And that's pretty much all we have to do. So from there, we're going to, in the next video, because we're going on about 15 minutes, we have to create our new procedure here, pass in the new variables, just like we did here, but with a bunch of them, and call it. So I'm going to create a new one called a put, and that's pretty much where we're going to call our new function up here from. And that's going to take care of hopefully everything for us. Anyhow, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to join my Discord down in the description below. And if you want to help support me, you can find a link down there with my Patreon in it as well. And in the Patreon, we have a Patreon-only series where we create Team Deathmatch from the ground up with Unreal Engine and C++, where you'll be supporting me and hopefully buying me a new mouse because my right mouse button keeps letting go and it's really driving me insane. Almost makes it worthless to play video games because, well, I can't aim half the time. It keeps getting me killed Tarkov. Anyways, I will see you in the next video.